Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey. This is not a martial arts related video. I was just thinking about something. I was watching a video about Star Wars. There is a YouTuber that I follow sometimes named Jessie Milestone, and she makes these videos where she talks about Star Wars and how she's very angry with the direction that Disney has taken the franchise in. And in a recent video, she talked about two of the characters in the new trilogy, Poe and Finn, two of the male leads, and how there's a bunch of speculation online that these two characters, because of their amicable interactions on screen, are closeted gay men, or that's what they're supposed to be. And that gave me a bit of pause. I started to wonder, when I watched those movies, I didn't get that feeling. And if they want to make a movie with gay characters in it, okay, no problem, go for it, cool, whatever. But this idea and this theory, apparently it's pretty widespread, that these two characters, because they are best bros basically on screen, that they're closeted gay men. It's I believe it is endemic of a stigma that has existed for a very long time, and this idea, theories like this are simply perpetuating it, that men cannot experience any level of intimate friendship with other men. They can't be just best bros, and that's kind of troubling, especially because the United States it's the world's hegemon. Do you know the difference between an empire and a hegemony? Well, an empire basically goes over and takes everything by force, and a hegemony takes over by influence. And so the world looks to America. Right here in China, where I live, the Chinese look to America for social mores, to try to determine how to act, how to be. Is that the lens right there? Anyway. And that's disappointing to a lot of Americans who love the idea of traditional Chinese culture. Kung Fu and red lanterns and lion dancing and all that neat stuff that they saw in old Kung Fu movies from Hong Kong back in the 70s. But you come to modern day Shanghai, it's not like that. Even if you go out into a remote village somewhere, it's not really like that either. The world is westernized, if you will, because we're looking to the hegemon. And right now, the hegemon, the United States, what are the main imports of the United States? I think the top three are, what are they? Car parts, electronics, something like that, oil, petroleum products. But I think number five export of the United States to other countries is films from Hollywood. Yeah, Hollywood movies. And the number one consumer of Hollywood movies right now is China, and has been for a while. And it's interesting, if you watch American films that come out in China, often they'll re-edit them for Chinese audiences. The first case of this I remember was when Iron Man 2 came out here in China, and I saw that in a Chinese theater. And they added these extra scenes where Iron Man goes to Beijing and flies past the Forbidden City, and they have a couple of Chinese actors in this extra scene tacked on at the end. And since then, they've had all these other movies where they have Chinese actors, or part of the movie takes place in China, or pushes some sort of CCP agenda. And yeah, why? Because China is buying those movies. China is one of the main sources of income for one of the main exports of the United States, because they look to the hegemon for influence. And so what's the hegemon telling them? What is Hollywood telling them? That two guys can't just be best bros. And that's really contradictory to traditional Chinese behavior. When I first got here to China, I looked around and I saw all of these stereotypical gay behaviors from the West in Chinese men who were not gay at all. Men holding hands, walking arm in arm. Men lying on each other's laps in public in the middle of the day, taking a nap, or on the metro, or on the bus. The things men would wear. I remember seeing this Chinese man about 10 years ago, and he was wearing what I could only describe as a blouse, a frilly, silky, semi-transparent blouse. And it was extremely effeminate. And if I saw a man dressed like that in the United States, especially back then, my very first thought would have been, that is a proud gay man. Not just a gay man, but a proud gay man. But when you see something like that in China, it just means it's a guy following high fashion. And Shanghai's it's a weird city for a lot of reasons, and one of those reasons is that people follow high fashion. I remember watching some fashion shows on TV when I was younger, and they would have all these fashion models walk by wearing these ridiculous outfits you would never see anybody sell at the local department store. I never knew anybody at school who dressed like that. Never saw anybody in any city I lived in dressing like that. And I just figured, well, why do they make clothes like that? Just for the show, I guess. But apparently there are places on earth where people actually follow high fashion and dress like that in real life. Man, I remember this very posh young man I saw on the side of the road here in Shanghai, and he was wearing heels, and he was wearing a cape. I kid you not, an actual cape. And I remember thinking, wow, he's trying to bring back capes. All right, good for him. Capes are actually a very excellent self-defense weapon against blades, knives, and swords, by the way. The cloak and dagger fighting style. My historical European martial arts friends will understand that. But yeah, it's a different world over here, but it's becoming less and less different because of Hollywood, because they look to the hegemon for influence. And again, through movies, Hollywood is telling these Chinese men, if you walk hand in hand, you are gay. And right now in China, gay is a social pariah, big time. In a lot of parts of the world it is. In the United States, there are a lot of movements going on trying to soften that, trying to change that, trying to change public opinion, that it's okay to be gay or whatever. But that's not the case over here in Southeast Asia. In fact, in Malaysia, just recently, I believe they just changed the law and made it legal to be gay. Because before that, it was, they'd send you to prison or worse or something. I don't know the exact details, but it was illegal for a very long time, and that's the case in a lot of parts of the world. Now, it's not illegal in China, but it's generally frowned upon by the public. And so you have men, manly Chinese men, normal Chinese heterosexual men over here, holding hands, walking arm in arm, lying their heads on each other's laps, wearing frilly blouses, giggling, doing things that American men do not do, Why? Because American men are terrified of being branded as a social pariah. Because whether you like it or not, what a minority does is what the minority does, and the majority will see it as an outlier, as different, as a pariah. And often that's quite unfortunate. So because China looks to the hegemon for influence through the movies, and the movies are telling them that true Chinese men should follow this model of American men. They cannot be best bros. Poe and Finn aren't just best bros. They're closeted gay men. Why are they closeted? Why? Because they're terrified of the consequences of coming out. Which is teaching these Chinese men that if they follow these Chinese traditional social norms, they will become social pariahs. That they should not express friendly intimacy, friendly masculine intimacy with their friends. And that word intimacy in the United States is often used as a euphemism, a sexual euphemism, and it's not. It simply means closeness. An emotional closeness. It can be physical intimacy, a physical closeness, but it can also be a close emotional bond. And I think American men have been trained in this narrative that they must avoid any form of intimacy with any other man, be it physical, emotional, or any other way. That's a shame. That's a shame, man, because when you cut yourself off from other humans, from other people, from other experiences, out of fear, when you feel that kind of unjust limitation is placed upon you, when that kind of burden is placed upon you, that is a difficult hole to climb out of. So what happens in the next 10, 20 years if China keeps looking to the hegemon for influence through the lens of the movies that tell them men cannot act like this unless they are gay, which in your country, in your culture, is a social pariah? I'm not saying that is right or wrong. It simply is the case here right now. You're going to make men afraid. And men who are afraid do not act rationally. Men who are afraid do not act intelligently. Men filled with fear do not act, they react. Can't two best bros just be best bros? It's just a movie until it isn't. Perhaps my viewers from Spain will understand this better than most. I have a degree in Spanish, a bachelor's degree in Spanish, which included a study of the literature and the history of the Iberian Peninsula. And I read and I studied the works of Lorca, a playwright, who wrote certain satirical works, including a play called La Casa de Bernarda Alba, which was satire of the government. At the time, Spain was a dictatorship under a dictator named Francisco Franco. And a lot of people were not happy about that. And you might not think that art matters very much. A play is just a play. A story is just a play. A story is just a story. A movie is just a movie. Until it isn't. And Lorca disappeared. He was taken. He was killed by the government. Why? Because his work was subversive. His work had a message. And people respond to a message. A message when it is put in the format of a story, because we do not communicate with logic. We do not communicate. We think we do. We think we do. We think we communicate with information, but we do not. We communicate with stories, with narratives. Remember our old buddy Jesus in the Bible? Unlike the Apostle Paul, who wrote much of the New Testament, when Jesus spoke, he didn't speak in big swaths of doctrinal speech. He spoke with stories, simple stories that illiterate peasants could understand. Simple stories with universal messages. Why? Because we remember stories. And that's why we remember Jesus. Well, one of the reasons. Buddha was very similar, for those from a Buddhist tradition. I picked up a copy of the Teachings of the Buddha one day and started reading through it, started thumbing through it, and I realized the teachings of the Buddha were stories. And they're different types of stories than the parables of Jesus, because Jesus would often teach a story like, here is the story, and here is the meaning of the story. But the Buddhist koans, the Buddhist stories are quite different, because it's here is the story, and then that's it. So here's the first one I read. A man is shipwrecked on an island, and he wants to get off of the island, but his ship is broken. And so he goes in search to find sticks and pitch from the trees to mend his ship. And so he searches the island for some time until he finds a bundle of sticks, a collection of the best sticks. And he finds pitch from the trees. And at some point, he forgets his objective of fixing the raft and getting off the island, and starts fixating on collecting the sticks. Like, hey, this is a really neat stick. Oh, there's another really neat stick. The end. And there was no explanation. I'm sure there are Buddhist priests who have talked about this ad nauseum and made interpretations of it. Who knows? But the Buddha did not say, and here is what it all means. Simply reflect upon it. And I've reflected on that story quite a bit over the years. A man goes to the island. He has this almost life or death imperative. I must get off this island. I must fix my ship. So he goes. But he gets caught up in this secondary objective. Or is it a secondary objective? Finding sticks. And instead of trying to get off the island, he keeps just finding sticks. Did the sticks make him happier than getting off of the island? Now, the Buddha did not ask that question, but since it is in my nature to search for meaning, I started to ask questions. Question everything, my friends. Because a story is just a story until it isn't, until we question. A movie is just a movie until it isn't, until we question it. You thought your objective here was to come to this island and fix your ship, or to come to this video and see something about Star Wars. But if you stuck around this long, you got lost in the pursuit of something else, a bundle of sticks perhaps, the prettiest stick perhaps, an unusual stick perhaps. Why did you stick around? Can't two best bros just be best bros?